The time has come to say goodbye to Moonlight. After 45 years, it's time for the next generation to enjoy her for a while. So I'm blowing off the dust that she's accumulated over the past year or so, and I'm taking her down to my daughter and her children at Gympie, which is about an hour north of us on the Sunshine Coast. Hi, I'm Chris Joseph. I'm into restoring and sailing old trailer boats. I built Moonlight 45 years ago in Tasmania from hewn pine. Right now I'm in a change of seasons. We're handing Moonlight onto our children and our grandchildren to enjoy, but the story took a new twist when I unexpectedly took possession of Sarah Ann several months back. She's the big sister to Moonlight. I'm on a mission to complete the restoration of Sarah Ann in the next few weeks and return her to Tasmania where she belongs. But first, I want to take her out on a sailing adventure in Queensland where we currently live. The clock is ticking and the hard work has begun. I've finally got the time to start working on Sarah Ann, which is the big sister to Moonlight. You might be wondering why I decided to stick with the original name for Sarah Ann. I had planned to rename her Claire de Lune, which is French for Moonlight, and this seemed appropriate enough as she is in a way a big sister to Moonlight, my 12-foot clinker dinghy. But it turns out that there is a story behind the naming of Sarah Ann that makes her worthy of retaining that name. She's named after the original Sarah Ann, which was a 66-foot ketch weighing about 45 tonnes built on the Huon River in Tasmania. She spent her early years in the Huon Hobart timber trade, but from 1886 onwards she often traded up and down the Tasmanian east coast as far north as Launceston. On her fateful voyage, Sarah Ann sailed from Launceston bound for Hobart on the 21st of April 1893 with a cargo of grain. She would have sailed past Gravelly Beach, the town we're relocating to in 5 weeks' time. She cleared Tamer Heads at 9 AM on the 23rd but failed to arrive. 2 other vessels reported seeing Sarah Ann in the vicinity of Tasman Head on the 25th of April during a southwesterly gale, and it was thought that the vessel may have capsized soon afterwards. Then in July of that year, a party of hunters on Shootin' Island reported finding the wreck of a vessel under the cliffs of Hen and Chickens Bay. The remains of her only boat, a small punt, were found on rocks with other wreckage, but there wasn't any trace of the crew of 5 or the passenger she was carrying. So this is a little Volvo MD1 diesel motor, marine diesel motor, which is intended for Sarah Ann. And look, to be honest with you, I've had almost zero experience with diesels over the years, and certainly this is the first time with a marine diesel, and I wanted to check it out before I actually fit it to the boat. I want to make sure it runs. So the first part of that is, can I turn it over? So it's got a manual start here. There's a crank, and it can be turned like so. I've been told that the likelihood of being able to start it with that is pretty low, but I will be trying that later on because it's handy to have it as a backup. Well, this will be an interesting little exercise. So I've worked out the wiring on this. The ground is on the block, and so it's the negatives on the block, and the positive is this terminal. These 2 ones here are a positive and a negative for the generator circuit. So this is a combination dyno generator starter motor, and the theory is when I connect that, there's going to be one of 2 things: either a big explosion from my 100 ampere hour battery, or it'll spin the engine. So I've got the decompressor on, Now it's not ready to start because I haven't connected fuel or water or anything else. I just want to know if I can turn the thing over before I have to resort either to this crank handle that I made, or alternatively turn it over with the starter motor. I'm a bit nervous about this because one of two things will happen. It'll either start spinning or it could result in a huge explosion. Anyway, let's see. Okay. So I think we'll call that successful. Do you ever have one of those problems that you stare at for months and you think about it through the night and you can't come up with a solution, and then one day you decide, well, it's just time, I've got to tackle it, and that's what's happened here. It's come to the point in time where I need to tackle the installation of the engine, and the place to start is with the mounts, which have a number of challenges about them. So here we go. So the first thing that I discovered is that the height of the engine beds is actually well below the shaft, which does give me a little bit more room to move. I'm going to install another floor at the aft end of the timbers, and that's just to stiffen things up for the motor. It used to have a simplex petrol motor in there, which in itself would have put a fair bit of stress on it, so I think it's a good improvement to make. The issue I have is that there's only about 14 millimetres above the engine bed timbers to the centre of the shaft, so I'm going to have to recess any kind of engine mount into those timbers. And the guys at Polytech were just absolutely awesome, providing me with 35 millimetre high mounts. John built the mast and the boom from old growth Oregon, which is very fine grained. I started off by trying to strip back and just patch her up, but it turned out it was too far gone. So with the help of Ken, my neighbour, who's an old yachty, we stripped off all the fittings and sanded it back to bare wood. I've put 4 coats of spar varnish on there, and I think that should be sufficient to protect her. Just need to keep it out of the sun when it's stored.
Hungry for the road all my life, thirsty for adventure all my youth, chasing all my freedoms down Liberty Avenue. And every time I hear a phrase my mother used to say to me, everything happens for a reason, I get the feeling I need a little taste of home, 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 just a little taste of home. I need a little taste of home, home, home. I need a little taste of home. Nothing like kitchen conversation, steam coming up off the stove, photographs down the staircase showing our stories unfold. And every time I hear a song, used to sing to me. Sweet words of an Irish lullaby. I get the feeling I need. A little taste of home, home, home. I need a little taste of home. Home, home, home. Just a little taste of home.
The decks are canvas glued over King Billy pine. It's very sound. There were a few little drummy spots which I injected a bit of epoxy underneath, but apart from crazing in the very old paint, she's actually in pretty good nick, so I didn't want to have to tear all that up. So what I did was I mixed up some thickened epoxy, sanded it back flat, and then blew it all off, and then spread filled it with thickened epoxy. I gave her a coat of 2-pack epoxy primer, so she's very waterproof.
I need a little taste of home, 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 no matter where I go. A little taste of home, home, home. I need a little taste of home. Just bought my ticket, I pick up the phone. I'm calling to tell you that I'm coming home.
The last time I hand cranked an old engine, it was a Farmall petrol motor, and it nearly broke my arm, so I'm very careful about the way I hold my hand there, so that if it does kick back on me, it's going to pull the handle straight out of my fingers.
Home, home, I'm coming home.